Ladies and gentlemen, it's day 52 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Let's just jump on ahead into our game here and find an opponent. I am raring to go today. We have that boy Forgiven from Greece. We'll play the Sicilian. And what will our opponent play? There are quite a few moves, but this Megarini variation is not something I've seen before. I think here we can probably just play normally. This might seek to play this, so this natural looking move might prevent a b4. To me this looks like a pawn sec, and I don't really mind taking this. It might give our opponent some chances of development here, but honestly if we just develop properly here, I think we should be able to take advantage of the pawn we just got. So what will our plan be here? We can't quite play this, I think, because then our opponent will take the center. I'm a bit wary here of opening up this diagonal to our king, but then this knight can always drop back here. Well, our knight gets targeted. It can't be defended like this, because this would lose us the game. Let's drop back and keep on developing. Now this also does defend this pawn, so our rook can move at some point. We probably have to be a bit careful here. This is a really interesting variation of the Sicilian. What should we do here? The move that speaks to me the most here might even be d5, I'm noticing. Then our opponent might be able to look for this move, but I'm not sure it necessarily convinces me. e6 might be a move here, but then this allows us from castling, so I'm not quite sure that's what I want to be looking at. Now we have had the England gambit yesterday and this bizarre variation of the Sicilian today. It does make me feel a bit confused as to what I am studying when we encounter those somewhat obscure moves or variations, but still I think this is okay. I'm trying to convince myself that this might be playable, but honestly I'm more convinced by the idea of going around here, because whenever we try to push this pawn, this looks a bit awkward. And then we can fight for the center from far away. And I think that might be an okay idea here. This does threaten a pawn capture. And it gets us closer to castling. We might be looking for this kind of a setup, simply to allow us to castle without being interrupted by this bishop. So let's get out here. I'm expecting a pawn push, or this does also defend the pawn. I'm suspecting here one of the best moves is either e6 or d6. d6 is interesting to me, then this doesn't necessarily become a move for our opponent. Let's have a look here. E6, can they push? No, they can't really push here. And this might actually be an idea. I think e6 seems most promising. I'm not going to move our king. This is what we'll play. This should lose to this move. But now the knight is defended, so this might be an indication our opponent is trying to prepare d5 here. But I think we can just develop. If they push, we have to calculate whether we want to take or maybe jump the knight in and hit this knight. Still, I think this should be an idea here. The bishop is looking down here, but I don't think that's an issue. This, well, it's an interesting move. If we castle, does this do anything? Well, it does forcefully grab the bishop here. This bishop can't really move. I did look at a6 earlier on here, but I felt like we could not quite invest a tempo here in this position to play the move because of our opponent's development advantage. Well, is this move here preventable? This knight doesn't quite have the option of preventing it. But let me look at this from another angle here. Is this really that bad? Honestly, I don't think giving up the bishop here is that bad. We are up a pawn, and we probably just want to get to castling. And they could try to trade off their active knight here for our undeveloped bishop, which I think might be good for us. Let's castle. If this queen here was not on d2 here, we could have this idea. And the knight can't really return because we still hit this. So I'm noticing here, or now this doesn't quite work because the knight can capture, but if we were able to force the queen away, let's say we had this. Now this still doesn't quite work because the knight would drop back and this would now be defended. Well, this move, it does threaten, I guess, to come in here. But is this a threat? This seems a bit... I don't quite know what I'd like to call this. But I don't think putting the bishop here would work for our opponent. What does this move do? Does it trap our queen? Yes, it does. What happens here? Well, I guess we are forced to move this, but then they can have discoveries against our rook. This is actually a bit trickier than I expected. We can't quite target those squares here either. This bishop has left the dark squares. I would like to jump in with this knight, but those are the only moves that could do so. So this does confuse me a bit here. Honestly, I don't quite see our continuation here. This, and they might even have this attack against our queen. Then if we take... Yeah, we don't actually get to take the bishop here, I think. We can't move our queen, because then we get forked immediately. So which alternatives might we have here? Don't want to spend too much time either. But honestly, we can't seem to get control over this square. If we play this, and our opponent comes here, I'm realizing we might have this move, so they don't have discoveries. I think this might work. We just have to make sure we don't go down here, but up here instead. And I think we should be solid. So let's play this move. Well, this is a fancy move by our opponent. We can't take, because then we lose our rook. Is this a move? Preparing this bishop development? Honestly, I think I like this. This should help us solve some problems here. As once we get this bishop off, we threaten this. And we could even move our knight here. Or here, I don't quite know where I would like to move it. But it does open up this square for our other pieces. Yeah, so let's go b6 here and see what our opponent does. Well, this does force our hand. Oh, this hangs the pawn. Yeah, I think we are forced to go back and lose this pawn. But could this be considered a counter sack? We might even have this move hitting both the knight and the bishop. I think this pawn might be uncapturable. But they trap our queen. Wow. This is incredible play by our opponent. They are just strangling us with 2 pieces alone. I am thoroughly impressed, I have to say. I don't really think we have any good options here. We have to give up our queen. What is the best we can get? We can't really take this. I think we might only get 1 piece for the queen. In that case, this might be our best move. Getting the bishop instead of the knight. I'm really impressed by our opponent here. It's incredible. For some reason I'm missing the tactics here. But it's really, really fascinating here. This should be the best move. I'm not seeing an alternative here for our opponent. So we are going to play down material here, but we are going to have an equal amount of pieces. Or they have this, and then this, or this even. Or honestly, does this work? But they have this. Somehow every tactic seems to fall short here. I'm not quite sure what to do. I guess I prefer this, so we don't threaten a rook trade. Is this an idea, pinning the bishop? This rook is undefended. But we can't really target the bishop, I'm noticing. But coming up here, I'm not seeing a whole lot of squares. So let's go for this. We could move a knight here and prepare this idea. Because those knights here are not doing a lot of work. And I think I would prefer this undefended knight here. Or would I? This connects our rooks. I think yeah, we might go for this. I see we are down on time here by quite a lot. So we might have to speed up here. And now those rooks are connected. So this isn't really a pin, I'm realizing. Oh, we get a fork, okay. Well, I guess we don't want to lose our rook, and we don't want to trade, because this gives our opponent the file. And we don't want to trade as we are down on material. So I think we'll move our rook over here, slide it on over to b8, and if this, we capture here. So what does our opponent respond with? I think I might consider this if I'm playing as our opponent after this capture. They wouldn't want to hang the bishop. They might want to evacuate it or go for the capture as they just did. Now we do have two options here. This pawn is always going to be weak, but I'm not quite sure this would help us all that much. Because those two pawns here could still get targeted. I think we might want to get our knight out. I'm trying to scan for moves here. I'm not seeing any tactical ideas here, at least, that work for us. We can't quite jump in here with our knight. Could we utilize this square? This does seem interesting, at least. Then we can defend this pawn for the time being, and this looks like a good outpost. I don't want to go this way because we don't want to trade material. So let's come up here. And this, I think, doesn't... It's not honestly that bad. We get rid of this backwards pawn, and we maintain our pawn chain. If they capture here, then our pawn chain is intact and our opponent gets a weakness we can target. So my intuition here tells me we should probably hit this pawn here, but it can be defended. Let's have a look. I think I might prefer going here prior to looking for those ideas, as we don't have an immediate threat with our knight. We just want to get our remaining pieces here into a potential attack and see what we'll do from there. So where is our opponent going to move? It seems they might be thinking now, finally. But I don't expect we will be pressuring our opponent on the clock, though, because we are down by quite a lot. Let's have a look. This is an unexpected move. We can't move our rooks here because they capture this. Their move threatens this. We could have this move, but then we lose our own threat against this pawn. I would have liked to remaneuver like this and then hold the pawn in place. So let's say we go here, then we defend for the time being. Could we even come around here and hold onto our pawn like this? That looks like an interesting idea, so let's go for it. This is defended, and this is targeted. Another good thing here is this knight is not very easily attacked, because it sits behind this pawn, so they can't come from the c-file at least with the rooks. This shouldn't be a move, I think. I think our optimal positioning here is getting our bishop onto this square on c5. We can't quite come around this way, I think, because this would prevent us from going here. Or would it? Honestly, it wouldn't. Because they can't capture with the queen, but the knight can capture, so let's come around here instead. Or no, we can go all the way back, I'm noticing. But then if we go here, this does become... No, it's not a check, so they can't pick it up. The knight, that is. Let's come back here and try to improve our piece. I'm expecting this rook to move, as long as there are no tactics here at least. We might see some moves like this, trying to force more material off. We might still have this kind of an idea here, but I don't quite like the knight on a5 as much as I do in the center here. So luckily here at least we are getting our bishop onto c5, it seems, which makes me a bit optimistic here, as we might have at least some better chances of coming back. with our bishop on this powerful square. Now if we do go here, I think our opponent's best chance of hitting this would be with a knight. And this kind of a maneuver might become an idea at some point to hit it. Or they might go here. Well, I think we can just follow through with our plans here after moving our knight, that is. We wouldn't want to hang it in one move. So let's come around here first. And then come up here. So what's our opponent's best move here? I'm not quite sure, but they might be threatening some infiltration ideas at some point. The knight jumps up here. There is no immediate threat, apart from this perhaps. Or honestly, this might be trying to set up ideas like this even. But I think we can always try to defend this pawn if needs be. I think we might want to improve our piece here first. Now we do have to make sure we make a mental note here. Currently this pawn is probably what's called overloaded. Threats against both pieces could force us to lose something. This is an immediate threat on our f7 pawn. This is probably too weakening, so we might have to play rook to f8 here to defend ourselves. What will our opponent do? I'm expecting the rooks to come down at some point here. They're not really blitzing out any moves though, so they probably seem to be thinking on each move, which makes it less likely for them to make blunders here. But what I am looking at though is if this rook moves. At some point we might have an idea of hitting the queen if this is sufficiently defended. And then picking up the rook, or our opponent might have to sacrifice the queen. So I'm not quite happy with this knight's positioning as of now. How could we improve it? The first thing I'm noticing here is this queen no longer threatens c4. So we might have an idea of coming up here. I would like to target this pawn and go for a fork, but this square is 4 squares away, or moves away rather, for our knight. So that's probably not going to happen. Can we come down here? We can't really come onto this file. This might be an idea, but this doesn't quite work. We might try to come up here then, but that's just going to allow us to come here, which we can already do through this maneuver. Well, our opponent is currently spending a whole lot of time. I guess this position here is a bit difficult to find an immediate idea for, because everything is defended for us. There might be an argument here, I guess, for lifting this rook perhaps, or even coming in like this. I'm trying to find good alternatives here. They might even triple up on this file. I'm not quite... King to f1. Okay. That's honestly somewhat baffling. Well, let's move our knight up, I guess. I guess it centralizes the king for the potential endgame here. We might be looking at a maneuver like this, coming on over here, and this might be a fork on both of the pawns. First hitting the queen, forcing it to move, and then threatening those two pawns here at the same time. So that might be an idea for picking up material, although I'm not quite sure as to how much one pawn would do. And if one of those pawns drop here, it does open up potential attacks paired up with this knight. So what is our opponent playing here? As I mentioned, they have started spending a bit of time on their moves at least. If they keep up this pace here, we might have an idea. What? Am I missing something? I'm honestly not seeing this move. I guess we take. Oh wow. This is just a fork. But then we do have this afterwards. I guess we have to go for it. I'm somewhat baffled, I have to say. Let's move out of the way. I'm expecting this, but we will get a counter-attack at least. Now I think we can look into getting our rook over here. And then see what... King to e2. Why does our opponent move to the center? Doesn't this just walk into an attack? I'm not quite sure. I guess we'll come here. If the queen moves, we might have ideas of hitting the king, but it might just be able to walk out. I'm not quite sure. I'm honestly baffled by the moves here. At least our opponent has proven they are a tactical mastermind in this game. I'm somehow missing all of their ideas. What does this move do? It just seems so random, if for a lack of a better word. I'm not seeing an immediate threat here, but honestly I'm not seeing a move for us even. We can't move a single piece, or we might be able to play this. Now I guess we can come in here and generate some threat. We might be threatening rook to g2 as well. Or rook to g1 rather. which might be a checkmate configuration here. Let's say they played a random move like this first, then this. Is this a checkmate? It might be. Honestly, this does seem to work. I'm not missing anything, am I? Oh, they can go here and just walk out, I guess. I guess I'm somewhat deflated by seeing that move. Can we just continue on attacking? Surely they have to make one mistake at some point here. And move on to a... We can't go here, I'm realizing. This... Okay, let's try to set up a threat here at least. Our opponent can come down here. But then we might escape to h6. Or they go here first. Okay. This seems to be first. Now this. Oh, it's not a checkmate because they can come back. But luckily at least this is a position where a single move can lead to checkmate for us. Let's come up, I guess. If they leave the d file here, then this is a checkmate. Now I'm just trying to be as resilient as possible, and oh yeah, this, I guess we come up. An opportunity might present itself if we are lucky. The queen though is still covering both of those checks here, so we can't quite get the tactics to work. This, and they still have this. Okay. Can we take the pawn? We might just be able to walk up here. Honestly, if we come back, I think we are getting checkmated by the two pieces. But this might be an idea as well. It would force this response. And there might be a checkmate here as well. I'm honestly baffled here. But still, if this rook moves off here, this is a checkmate. And if the queen leaves the third rank here, we might have some ideas of a bishop check. So there are still traps to fall into for our opponent. And now with our king here, this might even force the queen off the board, because otherwise this does look like a checkmate to me at least. To me, honestly, it's bizarre we even have ideas of getting checkmates in a position like this. I guess we'll come up here. This is forced. Our opponent says they have to go, but why did they sign up for this game if they don't have time? Oh well. Is this a forced checkmate? This is such a bizarre position. We can't come back, so it's this or this. But I guess our opponent does have the option of going now, because they seem to be able to checkmate us now at least. This forces this, and then this is checkmate. Or we might have this move. Let's try to be a bit tenacious. At least for us, every move here has been forced, and now we get a checkmate. Thanks for the game. That's boy forgiven. Now let's jump on ahead into a game review and see where our mistakes were played. I'm quite curious. This was a new variation of the Sicilian for me, and the pawn sec was quite interesting, the gambit at least. So I'm noticing here the accuracies were actually quite similar. We had 77.3 and our opponent had 78.0. We made 2 blunders. We had 4 inaccuracies and a mistake. Let's just jump on straight in here and see. Well, this is actually not that bad for white. But we shouldn't have captured. So if we ever encounter this again, we don't take, and we come up with our knight apparently. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes. Come on back here. This. We did have an advantage here though. D6 was best. Which, well, after having played the game, the weaknesses we did get on the dark squares here were quite decisive. So this does make some sense in hindsight. And this was apparently just an immediate blunder. Let's follow this line. Apparently knight to b5 and bishop to d6 is just about equally strong. The computer just wants to take advantage of the recently weakened dark squares. I thought we might just play like this and it wouldn't make much difference. But we can't really contest this square here without our pawn back on e7. This did miss the idea first for our opponent. We went up here and then they found the idea. This was okay for us. This too, actually. This is an incredible move. It's one of those moves that looks impossible, but it can be played. And here we are just up a bunch of material. I guess we should have played that move. I was somehow lost at the idea of this impossible looking move. So both we and our opponent did miss the move, and we walked into this blunder. Which honestly, if we didn't have this move, we would have already lost our queen here to the continuation our opponent played. And from this point on, it was indeed a downhill battle. We don't want to trade off material, the engine prefers it. I don't. We did play some sensible moves here. All were good moves apparently. This was not the best move. But here we did have some threats. I'm curious to see whether we had any missed ideas here, but our opponent... Yeah, this was actually a blunder. What happens if we get this check? And we block here. Well, this is probably some bizarre computer line. I guess we force the queen into a pin. Well, I wouldn't have spotted this with our limited time, considering all the possible moves they could have played. But did we have another chance here? No, it doesn't seem we did. And we just got checkmated on f2 as black. So this is, as I mentioned, an incredible position. I don't quite know how you would go about describing this journey from e8 here. We went all the way up, I can't remember all the squares, but we came up here in the end and got checkmated. Well, thanks a lot for the game. That boy forgiven. Well played. And thank you all for watching to the end of the video. This has been our game for today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.